Hello, welcome to the new member orientation for D37 on cannabis. My name is Ed Nodland. Just like you, I'm a volunteer. I'm on ASTM staff. These slides are available at this bit.ly link, bit.ly/D37Orientation, and this presentation video will be available at bit.ly/D37Video2023. I'm going to go over several topics. First, we're going to hit some topics about ASTM. Then we're going to get into Committee D37 and some particulars there, introduce you to the officers and subcommittees. From there, we're going to talk about standards, types of standards, how standards are used, standard development. We'll get into the balloting process. We'll look at membership balance, membership classification, and official voting status. Talk a little bit about committee week meetings, provide you a list of additional resources, and take a look at the My Committee's dashboard. Each of these subjects could probably be a talk in themselves in 30 minutes. I'm going to go through this very quickly. The purpose is to provide you with exposure to some of the terminology that is used and some of the processes and features and things and how you operate within ASTM. If your time is limited, at least review the additional resources. From there, you will get all this information. So ASTM was formed in 1898. I got some links here. The history of ASTM International, helping our world work better. That's a really good brochure. There's the ASTM.org website and the ASTM's D37 cannabis website. All of those have some really great information. So ASTM has been in operation, well, now 125 years as of 2023. Over 12,000 global standards. We got countries participating from 140 different countries and 30,000 volunteer members. There's a total of 149 technical committees. We're going to focus mainly on one of them, cannabis, today. Committees are identified by an ID and a title, such as D37 on cannabis, E60 sustainability, D08 roofing and waterproofing. Of the 140, you can go out and get a list of them at this link here. All these links are embedded, so you can just click on them in the slide deck. And then you can click through and see what subcommittees they have. Members often refer to committees by the idea. So if you're in a meeting and you hear somebody say, let's check with E27, don't be shy to ask what exactly is that committee. Committees have subcommittees, and those subcommittees form task groups to work on standards. We're going to take a look at that for D37. We'll look at the subcommittees, and I'll talk about task groups. So, member benefits. First, you get a free subscription to the bi-monthly magazine, Standardization News. I put the cover on one here that featured the Cannabis Committee. You get a free subscription to one volume of the standards, and the D37 standards are in volume 1510. So when you signed up, you were asked what volume you would like. Hopefully you picked 1510, unless you're involved with other committees that are more important. And if you want to change what you did select, you can get a hold of the staff manager, Jimmy, and we'll go over that here in a little bit too. You get to keep up with trends by networking with industry stakeholders and experts, and collaboration on latest methods and techniques, so you know where the industry is going, as well as help influence where that industry is going. You also get the monthly D37 member-generated newsletter. So, member responsibilities. We looked at benefits. What are your responsibilities? Participating with standards development in meetings is highly encouraged. Balloting is required to maintain official voting status, and we'll cover that later on. You should become familiar with the regulations governing ASTM technical committees. This is known as the Green Book. The Form and Style Guide, known as the Blue Book, especially if you're writing standards, but it's also helpful if you're balloting standards, because you can help collaborate on finding issues with the style or the form and the way that they're written. Become familiar with the My Committees page. I'm going to talk on that more throughout this. And become familiar with Compass. This is your tool to access standards, not only for Cannabis Committee, but other committees that you may be interested in. The other is to understand that competitors are coming together to collaborate, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, as far as this goes, ASTM works under antitrust regulations, and this is very important for ASTM. The purpose of the antitrust laws is to preserve economic competition in the marketplace by prohibiting, among other things, unreasonable restraints of trade. Antitrust laws require that all competition be open and unrestricted, and it's ASTM's policy to conduct all of our meetings and businesses in full compliance with international, federal, and state antitrust and competition laws. So we're really about, ASTM is really about, and the members of D37 are, open and transparent, nothing going on behind closed doors. Okay, so let's take a look at D37 on cannabis. It was formed in 2017. There's 15 D37 committees. 10 of them are technical. There's 1,255 members as of January of 2023. We got members from 36 nations involved with D37, and since 2017, we've released 48 cannabis standards. We got 100 more that are proposed or in work. And you can refer to my committee's standards tracking to get a list of these. So I've mentioned my committee several times. This is what the dashboard looks like. At the very end, I'll be going over several of these and giving you a little online demonstration of what these are. And okay, that pretty much covered that. So let's look at the officers of D37. The executive officers are all volunteers. Kathleen May is our chair. Our vice chair is David Valancourt, and the recording secretary is Terry Graschak. I am the membership secretary, and then we're supported by ASTM staff. Our staff manager is Jimmy Farrell. Our administrative assistant is Beth Lees, and our editor is Robert Boileau. Subcommittee officers you can find by going to the My Committees roster page and then clicking on the particular subcommittee you want to get information on, and there'll be a list of the officers for the subcommittees. D37 has 10 technical and 5 administrative subcommittees. Members, once you're a member of ASTM, you can join multiple committees and subcommittees, all for the same price of your membership. A list of subcommittees can be found on the My Committees roster page. These are the D37 ones. And you can use My Committees, Manage Committees to add or drop your participation. So some of our subcommittees here, I've put a few bullets together. We got laboratories. They're looking at test methods, ability to produce consistent results across different labs, and international harmonization. We have, then that's D37.03. D3701 is indoor and outdoor horticulture and agriculture, basically good agriculture and growing and collection practices. We got processing and handling. This is basically good manufacturing practices, safe packaging, accurate labeling, product consistency, quality management, getting all the quality systems in place to make sure that growing and processing, manufacturing, handling, labeling, testing is all done following quality principles and procedures. And there's several others. I'll just hit the titles here. D3705 on security and transportation, 06 on personnel training, assessment, and credentialing, 07 on industrial hemp, 08 on cannabis devices and appliances, 09 on sustainability, and our newest committee, D3710 on financial services and insurance. So from here, I'm going to switch subjects and we'll start talking about standards. There's 6 types of standards. Test methods are a definitive set of steps that result in a test result. A specification, and you can see the test results or test methods are the most common standards with ASTM. Specifications provide detailed requirements that must be satisfied for a material, a product, a system, or a service. And then we have practices. Practices are also a definitive set of steps to accomplish something, but not to produce a test result. And then there's guides. So you can have a guide that a practice uses shall statements. You shall do this, you shall do that, and often specifies a very particular sequence, just like a test method. A guide will use should statements. They're recommendations. It's common to have a test method and a practice that just get to the really basic steps that you need to be doing, and then the guide gets into more information and things you should do and options you can have as you implement and work through things. There's terminology, and every committee has a terminology document, and this contains terms that are common to many different standards within that committee. That way, those terms don't need to be, they're referenced and don't need to be specified in each and single standard that we have. Plus, we have a common definition then for a particular term. And the last one is a classification. We have, I think, 3 classification documents. Basically, you can think of, like a battery. You got different classes. You got D cells and C cells and AA and AAA. They're just different classifications of something. Now, all of these are standards. So when you heard the word standard, it could be referring to a test method, practice, classification, and often you'll hear of a standard referred to as just by its type. Practice D or guide D8222 on some subject. You may also hear it referred to as a standard practice or a standard test method. So, there's no separation between a standard. They're all standards. That term might be used or it might be individual. For more information on these, you can see the form and style guide. So how is a standard used? Many people think that as soon as a standard is released, the world's just going to automatically start following or even have to follow it. And that's not true. A standard gets written, and in one way that they can be used is just voluntary application. A company decides that they want to provide quality products, and they're going to do it following certain standards. And so it's a voluntary application of that. The second one is a customer is looking for suppliers or a service provider, and they put out a requirement, get some bids, and make a selection. But part of their requirement is they want that product or they want that service provided based on some ASTM standard. Another way is training based on ASTM standards, either internally or by training organizations. A fourth is certification to standards, where a standard certification is issued by a certification body, and these are usually accredited organizations. And the last is adoption by reference in state or national regulations. In this case, that standard does become something that has to be followed within the jurisdiction that's adopting that. So here's a couple of examples. I had a leak in a gutter. I went down to one of the big box stores. They got 2 or 3 different types of tar, caulking tube tar. And I picked a couple of them up, trying to decide is one better than the other. This one happened to have 2 statements that caught my eye. 100% wet surface adhesion per ASTM D3409, and no blistering, sagging, or sliding per ASTM D4586. Needless to say, I decided to go with this one. I know that it passed these test methods, and that I imagine this company is certified to show that they do produce this reliably. And the other one is a book my son showed me that he bought for our granddaughter. And down in the bottom, it had ASTM F963 on it. Comes out of the Children's Toys Committee. And I think it has to do with toxic toy standards. Okay, so standards development. Let's take a look now, switch gears again and look at the standards development and maintenance process. It starts by somebody identifying a need. From there, you can coordinate with a subcommittee chair or the chair of D37. And after that coordination, then you can register what's called a work item using my committee's ballots and work items. We'll take a look at that in a little while. You can obtain a template. It's optional. It's not required that you use it, but they do give you the layout and some mandatory sections that you need in that. If you're revising a previous standard, you would get that standard. You can get a copy, and you would start from there and make your revisions. You should review the directions for preparing and submitting work items for ballot, and you can form a task group, or you can work independently. So a task group can be just a member of one. and you get that drafted up. Now, you can open an ASTM collaboration area where you can share documents. People can download those documents, make changes and post them back up, or you can use other cloud tools that are online collaborative as well. Whatever it takes to get that standard written and get it prepared, you can go do it. When ready, you submit the item for ballot. First, it'll go to the subcommittee. So if this is a standard on growing, it's just going to go to subcommittee D3701. After that committee approves it, then it's going to go to the main committee. It's going to go to all 1,200 members. And in some cases, if it's been through at least one subcommittee vote, small changes and things like that can go out to subcommittee and main committee at the same time, and you'll hear that referred to as a concurrent ballot. Then there's a review. Once it is approved by subcommittee and the main committee, volunteer members, then there is a review by ASTM. Make sure it doesn't create any harm or anything for ASTM. It's all legal, follows their regulations, and then it goes to publishing. Updates to a standard can occur at any time. So if a standard was just released and you think there's a little change you need in that, you can check out a work item, propose that change, and put that back out to ballot. There is a review required after 5 years of everyone, the standards of every standard. So the standard needs to come up and go to a reinstatement ballot at least. And in that review, there might be some updates and changes that get made. So let's look at the balloting process. A draft standard is called a work item and has a number such as WK8450. When ready, the work item is submitted to ballot, allowing all members to collaborate via the comments and negatives. So the balloting process is also a collaboration process. Most of the standards, I think maybe all the standards I've written, I wrote them, I put them out to ballot, got back input on one of them recently, about 6 months ago. I incorporated 150 changes, over 150 changes, and then put that back out to ballot. As a matter of fact, that one's out there right now. So I'm using the balloting as a collaboration process as well, getting a lot of good comments and negatives. When negatives are received during the ballot process, they are addressed and another ballot may be required. And we're going to go into negatives a little bit more here. And approved standards are assigned, once a work item is approved, it's assigned a standard number such as D8222-21. The -21 is the year that standard was released or last revised or approved or reinstated. A reference that includes the years refers to a particular version. Without the year, it's referring to the latest version. So you'll see lots of times in a jurisdiction having authority, a government agency, they will refer to it with the year in place so that if they approve their regulations to use a standard with a -08 on it for 2008, they don't want a new version to come along and supersede that without the ability of them to review that, put it out for public comment, and make sure that that new version is what they want to be referencing in their regulations. So when you see the -21 or you see it left off, that's the reason for that. Ballot process voting. So let's take a look at voting. So when ballots are the first thing you're going to see when you join membership. You'll get an email saying there's a ballot. You need to go out and ballot on that. Vote on it. You can vote affirmatively and you can put comments in there. Affirmative means this can go out as is. I support it, but you can optionally put in comments. Basically what you're saying is, hey, if you're going to go in and touch this anyhow and make changes, here's some comments to consider. But the authors of that work item have no requirement to have to put those in. So if you really want them to address it, go with a negative. You can always withdraw your negative. We're going to talk about that. So a negative requires comment. And what it means is something needs to be addressed. And we're going to talk about how they get addressed in a little bit. You can also abstain. Sometimes you'll see a ballot come up, say you just joined and tomorrow you get this ballot and you really are still trying to just understand things. You can abstain. Maybe the standard is just way out of your league. You're not a chemist. You're not involved with laboratories. You got this very technical scientific test procedure and you want to abstain. However, you might find form and style issues that need corrected, terminology that seems confusing, and you can vote negative on that. So these are your 3 ways of voting on a particular ballot item. Now, addressing negatives. The first one is you're the small work task group, or you're the technical content on that standard, basically the author, and you get a negative and it is persuasive. In other words, you agree with it. You're going to make those changes. You can roll in other comments and you're going to reballot that. You can coordinate with the person that submitted the negative and ask them to withdraw that. Now, one reason they may withdraw it is they have not been involved in all the conversations over 6 months, 9 months, maybe even a year of conversations that went into developing the particular wording in that standard. And you're just going to talk to them about it, explain to them why it's written the way it is, and they're going to say, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. That is covered. I will withdraw my negative. You can negotiate for a withdrawal based on a future change. And in this case, I actually have a couple right now on a standard that's actively in ballot still. So as soon as it closes, I can start negotiating with them. I actually have already. And they both said, yeah, if you don't have any other changes that need to be made, they will withdraw it. And I told them I will develop the ballot item already that says, okay, we're going to, make a change here in the future as soon as this one gets out the door. And it's a lot easier to change a paragraph or a sentence than it is to reballot the entire thing, which opens it up. So, more on that later. You can also submit a non-persuasive letter ballot. And in this case, what you're saying is somebody put in a negative. Here's what they want to have changed. The technical contact or the task group feels that is not persuasive and that change should not be incorporated. The statement goes out. It's the submitter's original negative statement and their suggested wording goes out, as well as why it is not persuasive. And that goes out to a ballot, and the members then vote. Are you going to make that change that was submitted, or is it going to stay as originally proposed? And so that's called a non-persuasive letter ballot. You'll learn more about that over time. So here's that whole process in a diagram. You register a work item, you draft the work item, and you can work with a group. You submit it for committee ballot. If there are no negatives, it automatically goes to main committee for a ballot. If you did not intend for a standard to go automatically because you do want to collaborate on some things and you got a bunch of comments, vote negative yourself. You can easily withdraw that negative and that'll hold it. And then you can roll all the comments you get in, even though you did not receive any negatives other than your own. Now, if you do got negatives and they are persuasive, you're going to make changes. If you have negatives and they're not persuasive, you will go through this drafting of a persuasive letter ballot process, and that goes to ballot. So if you are writing a negative, make sure you're very clear on the wording. Suggest the wording that you want to have in there, because if that letter ballot says yes, it's persuasive, we need that wording to put it in there. Otherwise, it's not going to be persuasive, right? And you should also explain why you want that change. So it's very well written, because your wording is what's going to go to ballot. And if that wording is not clear and convincing, there's a good chance it's going to be found non-persuasive. Now, if that happens and it does get all the way out to a published standard, you can always check out a work item and propose that change as a new ballot item on that. Now, once it does get out of subcommittee, it goes to main. Basically, we got the same process here. It's submitted for the main ballot. Are the negatives no or yes? Are they persuasive? In the same basic process. Once it gets approved by main, it goes to the committees on standards for a review. The ASTM editor cleans it all up, and that gets published as a standard. So, to maintain a balance of stakeholder voter interest, there are 2 balance mechanisms. The first is membership classification, and the other is having one official voting member per voting interest. And that would be a company, an association, a government, or organization. So let's take a look at the classifications. I'm not going to go into depth on this, but basically producers grow, manufacture, and distribute cannabis products. And producer associations. Say there's a Washington State Cannabis Growers Association. They represent producers. Therefore, somebody from that producer association would also be considered a producer. So these are the people that are touching, they're manufacturing, processing, and distributing cannabis. Now, users are not ones that consume cannabis, that's consumers. Users are business-to-business users of cannabis, such as textiles made from hemp fiber, or biofuel, hempcrete, another product that's being made now. There are also suppliers to the industry that use the cannabis standards to know what to supply: growing media, fertilizers, pesticides, lighting, manufacturing equipment, extraction equipment, packaging, labeling materials and printers and things like that, test equipment. Those are also considered users, and by ASTM regulation, test labs, even though they touch samples of cannabis, they're not producing cannabis. And test labs, by, like I say, ASTM regulation, are considered users, consumers, and consumer advocacy groups. And then the others are a general interest. And some of the categories that fall into that are universities, students, research, government, or just individuals that have an interest. So there's a voting balance maintained such that this blue bar here, producers, which is about 30% of this graph, has no more than 50% of the official votes. So once producers get up to 50% of the membership, another member joins, that's going to be classified as a producer, would not have an official vote until we have more users, consumers, and general interest members join on. Right now, we have 182 producer votes available based on this balance. Some producers may be on a wait list, and ASTM Regulations Section 7 covers this. When we do have producers on a wait list, the producers first on that list are the first ones to gain official vote. The other one is official voting status. There's one official vote per affiliation. And voting status, now this is important, voting status does not apply to submitting comments or negatives. Any member, regardless of your voting status, can submit negatives. Everybody gets to collaborate on the content of that standard. Voting status has to do with decision-making. For a ballot item to pass, 60% of the official voters must vote, and 90% of these must vote affirmative for the work item to pass. If you fail to vote on 3 consecutive ballots, you can lose official vote. And you can use my committee's profile, view subcommittees to see your classification and voting status. So the reason this is in place, you got a company with hundreds of employees. They got 20 of their employees are members on a particular committee, say test labs. And then you got another company that's a small test lab, and they have 1 member on there. The 20 members company and the 1 member company have an equal voting power on when it comes to officially passing a work item. Okay, now on to committee week. Committees generally meet twice a year during 2 of the 8 committee week meetings, and D37 meets for 3 days during the January and June committee weeks. You might meet ASTM members from a variety of committees, with 140 plus committees. There's several different committees meeting within that week period. D37 meets for 3 days out of that. Typically, we've been meeting from Sunday to Tuesday. We had 1 year where we had 4 days on a Wednesday. You can visit my committee's meetings and symposia to see upcoming meeting information. Weekly, the committee week sessions start with a main meeting. Everybody gets together, hear what's going to happen for the week, hear a little bit about what's gone on over the last 6 months. We follow an official protocol. Following that, we break into task groups that have work to do. And as a subcommittee's task groups finish up, then there's a subcommittee meeting. There's no decisions made in a task group, official decisions made in a task group. Of course, they make decisions. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? But there's nothing that's official until it comes to subcommittee. So the task groups would summarize what they did, bring any decisions that need made forward, and those negatives or other decisions are then made there. And as the task groups finalized, then the subcommittee meets, has their official meeting, and then at the very end, we have a main meeting again with everybody. It's again official protocol, new business, old business. The subcommittees can then summarize decisions that they've made and the actions they have. And if a decision is made in sub, it also has to be approved by main. And so we go in and have those voting items there. There's a committee week luncheon during the week. That's usually been on Tuesday, our last day. And we also this year had a D37 networking reception one of the evenings. And that just gave us a chance to network with people. You know, lots of times we're just busy in all the work of writing the standards. And this gave us a chance to talk and network and relax a little bit as well. June 2020 through January 2022, all the committee weeks was virtual due to COVID. So here's some resources. You got your dashboard. There's online training. There's international awareness, another good article on global cooperation. Our staff manager, Jimmy Farrell, certainly a first point of contact for anything about ASTM operations. If it has to do with particular subjects having to do with standards development, get a hold of the subcommittee chair and the vice chair. There's the D37 monthly newsletter. You'll get emails on that, comes out monthly. If you're not getting it, check your spam. And then there's the D37 Cannabis website, and I put a couple of direct links to some resources that are on that website, the resources page and the FAQ page. Key documents, again, the regulations, the green book, the form and style guide, the blue book, draft standard templates, ASTM committee officer handbook, another good one to read. You'll learn about, you know, a lot of the operations and how things function. If you get involved with D3794, that's our strategic planning subcommittee. You'll be asked to be familiar with the strategic planning manual. There's a proxy form if you have an official vote and you can't make a meeting. You fill that out so somebody else can bring your vote forward for you. Symposium form, directions for preparing and submitting items for ballot. Okay, so with that, let's dive in real quick, take a look at the My Committees. There's 16 topics here. The next page has a short little item or words on what that topic does. And I'm going to give you a demo and show you the ones that have the asterisks next to them. And this is the point where we'd go to questions and answers. But since this is not a live presentation, I won't be able to take your questions. But we are looking to start a monthly orientation with a Q&A session, and that will be available starting in the spring of this year, 2023. And more information will be posted on that in the monthly D37 newsletter and other places where we distribute information. So with that, let's take a look at my committee page. So when you first sign in, you get the main ASTM page here. There's some good articles and things you can click. If I come up here, I can go to my committees. Okay, so on here now, this is the My Committees page, and I'm going to go over a few of the items that I talked about. Joining and dropping subcommittees. That's right over here on Manage Committees. And here you can view your profile. You can join another main committee. And so you can see I have 4. This is my account. I'm in 4 committees, and I can join and drop subcommittees, or I can drop from a committee here. You can join and drop whenever you want. It depends on if there's something going on that is of interest to you or your company. 3 ways to get back to my committees. One of them is right here. The other one is the cookie crumb up here. And the third one is off of this list here. So I'll just use this one since I have it up. The next one I wanted to hit is viewing your committee membership. So that is in committee profile. For D37, I can hit view, and I can hit subcommittee memberships, and I can see my memberships in the different subcommittees. Okay, then we have, the next one I want to stop on is viewing the roster. So right here is the rosters. And so now I can see the roster for the entire cannabis committees, or if I just wanted to find out who the officers are in O2 on quality, I can see that over here. And I can also get contact information for other members on this subcommittee. Go back to my committees. List of D37 standards right here. This is another good one. And you should click through all of these once and see where they take you. Become familiar with it and know how to find it. So here's standards tracking. If I want to see all the standards, I can click on D37. If I want to see standards for just a particular subcommittee that I'm interested in, I can take a look at that. I'll click on D37. So here you can see the different standards. You can see if there's a work item out there related to that standard, that means it's being revised. And once, and this is probably terminology here. Yep, that's terminology. Once the big terminology document was out, now we're just adding term one by one. So each of these ballot items is one term being added or removed or revised. And after I get through all the release standards, I get to work items that are proposed. And so these are the proposed ones that are in work. And it also has the ballot IDs. I'm not going to go into that here, but they tell you how to find them inside of ballots. And from there, you can get the negatives and comments and things like that. So back to the top, back to my committees. Active ballots that require your vote are going to be right over here. These are my outstanding ballots. And so you can see I have 2 of them. You can click through there. Pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions on balloting, get a hold of Jimmy or a subcommittee chair. And if you've already balloted on open ballots, but they're still open, they're still actively being balloted and voted on, you can click here and you can see all the ballots that are open. And so you can see the close date on these ballots. And I've submitted comments on 2 of them. I have one that I need to ballot here before February 24th. That's ballots. And the last one, access to other resources. Definitely, I'll use the cookie crumb here this time to get back to my committees. And down here, additional resources. The main things I want to point out is this terminology dictionary. You can put in a term. You can filter to just terms within a particular committee. So if you want to see how the word cannabis is defined within D37, you'd pick D37 and you'd put in the word cannabis and you would get terms that have the word cannabis within that term someplace. There's also member training that's very important to use, and there's a few other resources. And again, you can click through those. So with that, that pretty much completes the presentation. Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. There's a lot of us that would be glad to help you out. Bye.